Please welcome Dr. Mark Hendrickson from Grove City College for the purpose of an introduction.
Good afternoon, everybody. I can't see, I'm being blinded by the light. I think a lot of you probably already know Congressman Mike Kelly. Since he was first elected to the House in 2010, he's been a highly visible and outspoken defender of conservative values. And if you haven't seen, he's got a classic 5-minute YouTube clip where with impassioned common sense, he just rips to shreds the folly and absurdity of federal hyper-regulation. It's really brilliant, you ought to see it. I'm going to be on a panel later this afternoon. I'm going to put my suit coat back on, but I wore this especially for Congressman Kelly. He's a proud American of Irish extraction. He had a football academic scholarship to play football at the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. He's got a name like Kelly. And in the 3rd District of Pennsylvania, which he represents, when we wear green, you know, it's like in the 50s we had little buttons that said, "I like Ike." Well, when you're wearing green where we live, it means I like Mike, and we certainly do. And let me tell you how I first met him. 6 years ago this month, it was at a Tea Party event in Mercer County, where I was speaking, and Congressman Kelly and some other candidates for the Republican nomination for the House were there. And he stood out. They were all good people, but he stood out from all of them with his command of the facts, with his articulation, and especially because, to me, he embodied the ideal of the citizen legislator. He wasn't a professional politician. He was in his 60s when he was starting his political career, and he could have easily been thinking of taking the easy way out and retiring. He's got a lovely family. He's got some grandkids. Now he's got 10 grandkids. And he went to Congress because he saw the country was in a time of crisis, a time of need, and so rather than take the easy way out, he has dedicated his life to serving us. And he's done it very well. A couple years ago, for example, I looked at his voting record. He was the only one of 23 representatives that Pennsylvania has in the U.S. House of Representatives with a 100% score on the pro-life voting issues. And he's totally, I mean, it reflects he doesn't compromise on principles like that. He's got the Christian conviction of the sanctity of life. He had a courageous vote just last December where he defied his friend, Speaker Paul Ryan, and voted against the omnibus spending bill, which Henry Reid called a good piece of legislation. So, you know, of course it wasn't, and Congressman Kelly voted against that. He works tirelessly. We've got a rather sprawled out district. It's over 100 miles from north to south, and he's crisscrossing it all the time, spending time with his constituents. I had the privilege of being with him in Washington a few Januaries ago, and we were talking about the State of the Union address for a couple of hours afterwards in his office. He said, "Well, let's go to McDonald's." So we're sitting at McDonald's just talking about this one-on-one, talking about the State of the Union. All of a sudden I look at my watch, and it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I said, "Congressman, what time do you have to be at work?" He says, "Well, we've got hearings at 7, so I've got to be at the Capitol Office Building at 6:30. That's how dedicated this man is. Now, one more thing. I said he's the ideal of the citizen legislator, and he certainly is. And the original concept of a congressman was not to try to see how much bacon they could take from Americans who lived in other districts to bring it home to their district. It was simply to have representatives of each state go to Washington and try to work out policies that are good for the United States of America. That's the spirit with which he approaches his job. When you listen to his rhetoric, you know, he's not talking about what's good for this special interest or what's good, you know, for the Republicans or anything like that. He always couches it in terms of what's good for Americans. And that is just a wonderful attitude that he has. So while it would be literally correct for me to introduce him as my congressman, since I'm a resident of the 3rd District that he represents, it would be far more accurate for me to use this phraseology. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to present to you our Congressman, Mike Kelly.